Hello everyone, welcome to Continental Aspire Soccer TV. Here we are for another episode, and we are with Mr. John McCluskey, who actually has worked with brands and pioneered brands such as Reebok in the UK, working as a top sports marketing executive. Tell me this, so your very first time, so obviously you would have had the UK division, and in terms of the players that you obviously got to. So obviously, when you first met Ryan, what year would that have been when you first met Ryan?
Oof, I'm going to take a stab, maybe 92, 93, somewhere around there.
Yeah. Okay. So he was 18, 19 maybe?
18, 19? I'm not that old, Nick.
No. Yeah, I met Ryan, but yeah. And so he was about 18, 19 years of age? Because I think he had just been in the Manchester United first team, hadn't he?
Yeah, we were very fortunate because we worked with a gentleman at Manchester United, Wes Kershaw, who worked with the youth.
And Chief Scout, yeah.
Yeah, he guided us into a lot of players, and Ryan was one of the players that he recommended, and we signed him, and it was one of the best things for Reebok UK. He wasn't well known in the beginning outside of the UK, obviously, until he became a mainstay at United, and they had the success they did in Europe. But this is a funny story that I'll share with some of your listeners. I had always butt heads with Reebok UK. It was very hard for them to take direction or to listen to suggestions from an American. And I've had this all my professional life in football. And through Wes Kershaw, who I developed a very good relationship, he recommended a young player, and I think he was maybe 16 at the time. So to do the politically correct thing after I spoke with my boss, get Reebok UK involved. In those days, it was a fax. So I sent the fax to the person in charge, and I said, look, I have from very reliable sources at United that this player has a great future. Please review, discuss, and come back to me. And by the way, I'm willing to pay most of the contract. Well, I waited about 10 days. I wrote them again on a fax, and they responded. John, we've discussed this young boy and player, and we've decided to pass. Thank you very much. Well, the rest of the story, that player was David Beckham.
Wow.
Yeah. But woulda, shoulda, coulda, right? But that happens a lot. I missed out on some good players. But
would you say that was similar? Because wasn't it similar with Michael Jordan and why Adidas wouldn't just pay him the money? Because he really wanted to go to Adidas, and David would have came to Reebok, wouldn't he?
I think so, because Reebok was a very strong brand. One of our strongest.
Adidas wasn't really strong at that point.
Yeah.
It wasn't. They weren't really at the forefront.
Well, that's a good point, because at that time, Adidas was having some financial struggles, and I'll share a story with your listeners that's outside of football. Shaquille O'Neal, Shaq as he's known, won the National Basketball Championship in April, and he decided to leave school early to go to the NBA. There's a process where you have to declare yourself free, eligible for the NBA draft. So at the same time we had done some soccer business, we realized that we need to step up our NBA or basketball business. If you want to be an American brand, you have to be in the NBA.
Right.
So we pitched the agent we'd like to, entertain having Shaquille O'Neal as our ambassador for basketball. And at the time, there was no Under Armour. Everyone needs to know this. This was before Under Armour existed. So it was Adidas, Nike, and Reebok. Well,
right.
Nike had Michael Jordan. Adidas had some fringe players, and they were in the business, but we knew they were having some financial problems. But we decided that to sign Shaq was job number one. We had to really make an impact with a player that everybody will know. And Michael Jordan was on his way out. So we had Shaq and his family come. The whole company met him in the company lobby. We manufactured what we call a varsity jacket, wool and leather. It's something that every college player gets. And we put a big S logo that looked like Superman. It was kind of a variation of that. And we had some designs of some shoes. And the idea was really to woo him over, because we knew that at least Nike or perhaps Adidas would be tough, opponents to win him. And we showed him around, and he was very impressed. And he said, "Guys, look, I can't make a decision now. Everything you've shown me and told me is very impressive, but now I have to go to Adidas and Nike." So he went to Adidas, and apparently now I know that the offer was far less because they were experiencing difficulty. And then he went to Nike, and he made a big mistake.
Right.
He went into the building. He walked into the building wearing the Reebok jacket. And Phil Knight got wind of that and said, "We're not signing him. How dare he come into my house and show me wear a competitor's, jacket?" And so they went through the process, but it was never going to happen. So I think almost by default, because Adidas didn't have enough money, we got Shaq. And it was a very successful relationship over the years, I think, for both people. It certainly took our basketball and performance presence to a different level, to a higher level. And Shaq made a lot of money. But I'll share another anecdote about Shaq that's kind of comical. So he declared for the draft in April. We negotiated with him in May. We signed the deal probably in June or July. And then, if I remember correctly, the NBA rookies report to camp in probably August or September. And his shoes were sent down there, FedExed. And he called and he said, "Guys, listen, the shoes are hurting my feet. Kiss of death. You don't want to hear this." There was a story several months ago where a basketball player at Duke University, his Nikes blew out, and that was like the worst thing possible. The worst publicity you could get for a shoe company. So
Right.
we sent a bunch of people down there, and for a couple of days we stretched them and looked at his feet, and we tried to adjust them. And he'd play, and they still hurt.
Right.
So someone finally had the genius, the light bulb went out and said, "Look, let's measure his feet again." Now, remind you, we began talking in April and signed it in probably, June or July, and he was at training camp in August or September. They measured his feet. They grew 2 sizes. They went from a size 20 to a 22.
Right.
So that's a story that not too many people know, but I think it's fair that it can be shared now.
Yeah, absolutely. So whenever obviously Reebok being a US brand that kind of has obviously broken into Europe, what would you say in terms of when you're looking at where Reebok's kind of next steps were? So obviously they had Ryan Giggs, and I know that obviously in terms of just for everybody, who did Reebok represent players wise? Who were the top 10 players that Reebok that obviously were signed to Reebok?
Well, from a footballing standpoint, it was marquee. Jurgen Klinsman, Peter Schmeichel, Raul at Real Madrid, and we had probably 70% of the Spanish national team. We had Gabriel Batistuta, one of the best goal scorers ever, at Fiorentina and for Argentina. We had Dunga, the captain of Brazil, and scored the winning goal at the 1994 World Cup. We had probably 4 or 5 of the Mexican national team players, which were very important for the United States market. Our soccer sales skyrocketed in Western America, Western U.S. because of the Mexican influence and having those 4 players that we had. The best players, Zague, not Marcus, but Ramon Ramirez, Garcia Aspe. And I could go on. Martin Dahlin, who played for Sweden, and Blackburn. Henrik Larsson, Sweden and Glasgow Celtic.
Barcelona,
I could go on, and it was a short run. It was probably 10 years, but I don't think that any other brand had better players than we did. I mean,
Yeah.
Nike did have Romario and Ronaldo, which were good players, but I'd throw Batistuta. And the one thing that we did do, we tried to get players that were very good people.
Right.
Nike would sign anyone. I don't think they didn't go after bad guys, but if they did bad things, they still stood behind their player. That's their philosophy. Whereas we took a different approach. We wanted good role models. I don't think that hurt us. We had Dennis Bergkamp, and Dennis Bergkamp was one of the best players who ever played in the Premier League. You could argue there's 10 better, but certainly, one of the England Premier League's best players, and but very quiet, like Ryan Giggs. I mean, this is the problem sometimes that their personalities were not like a Romario or a Ronaldo, very quiet. But that's what we chose. We wanted to have a type player that let their footballing skills do the talking.
Right, and so your tenure with Reebok, so your journey pretty much was from like 1991 all the way.
I think I joined it right at the end of, like, in November, December of 90, and left in, I want to say, 2004.
Whenever you're looking at like Jurgen Klinsman, who was it that made the recommendation to sign him?
That was a group decision, an American decision, believe it or not.
Okay.
We have an inferiority complex here in this country about soccer or football. And I think you would find that the pretty well-versed soccer fan is much more globally versed on the sport than, let's say, an English fan or a French fan or a German fan.
Right.
And I understand it because, look, first of all, we know the EPL is the top game in the world. Some may argue La Liga is, but we have this thirst for it. It's an insecurity we have. So we watch it, we read about it. And so the group, All-American, that I had was extremely well-versed. And we talked about, how we needed to go to the next level. And so Jurgen fit the mold there, where we wanted to go to the next level. I think Nike at that time had signed Brazil, and I think they were running low on Ronaldo, and they were looking for their next player. And we had a little bit of a problem because Jurgen still couldn't wear Reebok for the national team. But him being at Spurs, in a London club, in the EPL, which was rising as the number one league in the world, because don't forget at that time, Serie A was very strong.
Yeah,
so
it was very strong, yeah.
We saw the shift that the EPL was becoming the main event around the world. And so, Jurgen was somebody who spoke different languages. He had cross-global appeal. The Asian market knew him.
When you look at like how Reebok UK, why would you say the relationship would be a little bit contentious? Because I know obviously they wouldn't sign David Beckham, which I think obviously you've spoken about. Why do you think that was?
I know the answer to that, and I don't think a lot of your listeners are going to like it. I'm going to skirt around this and say it sort of sideways, and I think people will get the point. But it's sort of the same reason why every World Cup comes around and they say England's going to win the World Cup, and they actually believe that.
Right.
But now they actually can win the World Cup. But in those days, they had no chance. They were beaten, from everybody knows and laughs they can't make a penalty, and that sort of thought process went down to business. And it wasn't until, this is terrible to say, but until foreign coaches came into the EPL, the standard went up.
Right.
It wasn't that British players weren't as good. It was some of the habits that they had. And that goes from the drinking culture. Right. I went into Anfield. There's a McDonald's there. I don't know if it's still there. I had a meeting when we had signed them, and who do I see in the McDonald's after training but Robbie Fowler and Jamie Redknapp?
Right.
Now, that would never happen on the continent. They would not be allowed to eat McDonald's. And as you know, it's gotten a lot better, but there was a culture of training, and then afterwards, it was your time, you could do what you want. Well, if you look at an academy in France, part of your training is rest. You train for 90 minutes, you have a meal that they prepare for you, and then you're required to rest. It doesn't mean you need to sleep, but you rest, because rest is recovery. And I know I'm getting a little bit off topic, but I think England invented the game, and they'll always be known for that. But people can improve things. You know, they say that Henry Ford invented the car. I don't think he did. I think it was the guy who Mercedes was the original car inventor. Getting back to Reebok, why I had to butt heads was a simple thing like making multi-stud shoes. They didn't want them. They didn't accept it. They didn't believe that anyone needed it. But yet you had not only the U.S., which was the biggest market for soccer goods in the world, you had all of Latin America, which plays on a similar type. So it's cultural, and it was very difficult. In fact, a man who became a good friend who ran Reebok, he actually owned a club in England, a small club. I remember when we sat down and said, look, we want to sign Liverpool. And his retort to me was, you're smoking dope. You know, it's a mentality. And things have changed for the better football-wise in England. It is by far the best league in the world. Get the best coaches. Some of the academies are the best in the world, but it always wasn't like that.
Right.
And American, you know, me coming over, trying to sell them soccer, and I would use the word football at the time, rubbed people the wrong way. I mean, I had a salesman, imagine this, a salesman at Reebok UK who told me that he was going to get me fired because I removed the shoes that in the line that had stitching around the stud. I scientifically proved to him that by removing the stitching, you could increase the width of the stud, giving a player much more stability by 2 to 4 millimeters. And that's going to have any edge, whether it's 1 millimeter or 10 millimeters, to give you an edge. That's what you want. So don't forget, Reebok was founded, it was the J.W. Foster and Sons brand that originated in the UK, I believe in the Bolton area. And if anyone ever saw Chariots of Fire, one of those individuals, or actually I think the real individuals, wore J.W. Foster's track shoes. J.W. Foster's and Son were the first company to put little spikes on track shoes, giving an athlete's the edge when they were running. And this is very important to me because I met Horst Dassler, and one of the things as a young man he made sure that I did was never lose sight of why you're in business, which was to give the athlete the best product that athlete could have to perform at the highest level. And that stuck with me, and particularly when we were at Reebok. I mean, at Puma, I had to take a lot of product from Germany that was designed there. I had no design element other than to say, hey, look, we need multi-studded shoes here. We need gummy shoes to maintain our credibility and authenticity, because then no one could question, you know?